in the heart of medieval France. A time of chaos and war, when the land was ravaged by the 100 Years' War and the English occupied much of the kingdom. Hope was a distant memory. Yet, from the quiet village of Domrémy, a teenage girl arose. A peasant with no formal education, no noble blood, and no military training. Her name was Joan of Arc, a name that would echo through history as a symbol of courage, faith, and determination. Guided by visions of saints and angels, Joan claimed she was chosen by God to lead France to victory. But how does a simple farm girl convince a defeated king and a disheartened army to follow her? How does she stand undaunted against the might of England and the skepticism of her own countrymen? Joan of Arc's story is not just one of battles and victories. It is a tale of divine purpose, unshakable belief, and ultimate sacrifice. Today, we step back in time to uncover the journey of a young woman who changed the course of history. From the fields of Domrémy to the coronation at Reims, and ultimately to the flames of Rouen, this is the extraordinary story of Joan of Arc, the maiden who defied kings. Joan of Arc was born in 1412 in the small village of Domrémy, located in northeastern France. Her family was simple farmers, and Joan grew up tending sheep and helping with household chores. Life in Domrémy was peaceful, but the shadow of the 100 Years' War loomed over the region. Frequent raids by English and Burgundian forces brought fear and instability to the villagers. From an early age, Joan displayed a deep sense of piety. She attended church regularly and was known for her strong devotion to prayer. Around the age of 13, in the year 1425, Joan began experiencing visions that would change her life forever. She claimed that Saint Michael, Saint Catherine, and Saint Margaret appeared to her, instructing her to drive the English out of France and ensure the coronation of Charles VII as the rightful king. At first, Joan kept these visions to herself, unsure of how to act on them. But as the years passed and the war continued to devastate France, her divine mission became increasingly clear to her. By 1428, when Joan was 16 years old, she could no longer ignore the call. She believed that God had chosen her to save her country, a conviction that would set her on a path of incredible courage and sacrifice. By 1428, France was on the brink of collapse. The English and their Burgundian allies controlled vast territories, and the French crown was in turmoil. Charles VII, the uncrowned Dauphin of France, had retreated to the city of Chinon, his authority weakened, and his claim to the throne in question. The morale of the French people was at its lowest point, and hope seemed lost. It was during this time that Joan, now a determined young woman, decided to act. She sought out Robert de Baudricourt, the local commander in Vaucouleurs, and told him of her divine mission. Joan's request was extraordinary. She demanded to be taken to Charles VII so she could convince him to let her lead an army against the English. At first, Baudricourt dismissed her as a foolish girl Who would believe that a teenage peasant could be chosen by God to save France? But Joan's persistence and the conviction in her words began to sway those around her. She gained the support of a small group of loyal followers who believed in her visions. When word of her determination spread, people began to see her as a sign of divine intervention, a beacon of hope in a time of despair. In February 1429, after months of pleading, Robert de Baudricourt finally relented. He provided Joan with a small escort and sent her to Chinon to meet Charles VII. Dressed in men's clothing for her protection and carrying a letter of introduction, Joan embarked on a dangerous journey through enemy territory. Her resolve never wavered, and every step brought her closer to fulfilling her divine mission. When Joan arrived at the court of Charles VII, the Dauphin was skeptical. To test her authenticity, he disguised himself among his courtiers, hoping to trick her. But Joan, guided by her visions, recognized him immediately and addressed him as the rightful king. This miraculous moment stunned the court and marked the beginning of Joan's rise to prominence. Charles, desperate for any hope of victory, agreed to put Joan's faith to the test. Before allowing her to lead an army, he ordered an investigation into her character and claims. Church officials and theologians examined Joan, questioning her visions and her intentions. Their findings were astonishing. They could find no fault in her. Joan's piety, sincerity, and unwavering belief in her mission convinced them that she was genuine. With the support of Charles VII and the blessing of the Church, Joan was finally given her chance. In April 1429, she was provided with armor, a banner bearing the names of Jesus and Mary, and command of a small force. The stage was set for one of the most remarkable military campaigns in history. A campaign led by a teenage girl who believed she was chosen by God to save her country. In April 1429, Joan of Arc arrived in Orléans, a city under siege by the English. For months the city had been cut off, and French forces were unable to break the siege. Morale among the defenders was low, and the English seemed poised for victory. Joan's arrival electrified the French troops and the city's citizens. Dressed in her white armor and carrying her sacred banner, she became a symbol of hope and divine intervention. Though she had no formal military training, Joan inspired the French commanders to act decisively. She led a series of assaults on English positions, rallying the soldiers with her unwavering faith and courage. On May 7, 1429, Joan led the final attack on the English fortifications. Fighting alongside her troops, she was wounded by an arrow, but refused to retreat. Her presence on the battlefield reinvigorated the French forces, and by the next day, the English abandoned the siege. The city of Orléans was liberated, marking a significant turning point in the war. Joan's victory at Orléans was nothing short of miraculous. The news of her success spread quickly, and she became a hero to the French people. For Charles VII, this was proof that Joan was indeed chosen by God. The path to Reims and his coronation was now within reach. With the liberation of Orléans, Joan of Arc urged Charles VII to press forward. She believed that his coronation in Reims, the traditional site for crowning French kings, would solidify his legitimacy and rally the nation. Charles, buoyed by Joan's success, agreed to the bold plan, despite the city being deep in enemy-held territory. In June 1429, Joan and the French army launched a series of campaigns to clear the path to Reims. Her leadership continued to inspire the troops as they achieved victory after victory, recapturing key towns and fortresses along the way. Joan's faith and determination drove the army forward, overcoming obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. By mid-July, the road to Reims was secured. On July 17, 1429, Charles VII was crowned king in a grand ceremony at Reims Cathedral, with Joan standing proudly by his side. Clad in her armor and holding her banner, she had fulfilled her divine mission. The sight of Joan at the coronation was a powerful symbol for the French people, representing both divine favor and the hope of a united France. This triumph marked the pinnacle of Joan's influence. Her unwavering belief had turned the tide of the war and changed the course of French history. However, her journey was far from over, and greater challenges awaited her in the months ahead. Following the coronation, Joan urged Charles VII to continue the offensive and reclaim more French territories. However, the king and his advisors grew cautious, hesitant to fully commit to Joan's bold strategies. Despite this, Joan continued to lead smaller campaigns, seeking to liberate key cities and secure France's position. In May 1430, while defending the town of Compiègne from a Burgundian attack, Joan was captured. She had stayed behind to ensure her troops' safety, but was surrounded and taken prisoner by the Burgundians, allies of the English. This moment marked a turning point in her journey, one filled with betrayal and heartbreak. The Burgundians sold Joan to the English, who saw her as both a political threat and a heretic. For the English, discrediting Joan was crucial to undermining the legitimacy of Charles VII's reign. Joan's capture shocked France, and while she remained steadfast in her faith and mission, her fate was now in the hands of her enemies. Joan of Arc's trial began in January 1431 in the city of Rouen, which was under English control. The trial was not a quest for truth, but a political maneuver designed to discredit her and, by extension, Charles VII. Accused of heresy, witchcraft, and cross-dressing, Joan faced a biased court, composed largely of pro-English clergy. Throughout the trial, Joan displayed remarkable composure and intelligence. She defended herself eloquently, often outwitting her interrogators. When questioned about her visions, she stood firm, insisting that they were messages from God. Her refusal to submit to the demands of the court only strengthened the perception that she was divinely inspired. Despite her unwavering defense, the outcome was predetermined. On May 29, 1431, Joan was convicted of heresy. The following day, she was led to the stake in the marketplace of Rouen. As the flames consumed her, Joan's final words were a prayer. Jesus, Jesus. Joan's death was a tragic end to a life of extraordinary courage and faith. However, her execution did not achieve the English goal of discrediting her. Instead, it solidified her status as a martyr and a symbol of French resistance. In the years following her death, Joan's story continued to inspire the French people. Her martyrdom became a rallying cry for resistance against English occupation. By 1453, just 22 years after her execution, the 100 Years' War ended with a decisive French victory, fulfilling much of the mission Joan had fought for. Decades later, in 1456, a retrial ordered by the Pope declared Joan innocent of all charges and acknowledged her trial as unjust. This official vindication restored her honor and recognized her extraordinary contributions to France. Joan of Arc's legacy grew over the centuries. She became a symbol of faith, courage, and the power of conviction. In 1920, nearly 500 years after her death, the Catholic Church canonized her as a saint, cementing her place in history as both a religious and national icon. Today, Joan of Arc remains one of the most enduring figures in world history. Her story continues to inspire people across the globe, reminding us of the strength found in faith, the resilience of the human spirit, and the impact one individual can have on the course of history.